55176
Oh.
and 55107. Because we've got that one thing.
I call this meeting of the Northeast Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The board will now adjourn into executive session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act. Texas Government Code, Section 551.076, Chapter 551.071, private consultation with the board's attorney, and the time is 5:30. The board will now reconvene into open session, and the time is 6:22. On behalf of the trustees, I would like to welcome you to this evening's meeting of the Northeast Independent School Board. This is a business meeting of the board held in public. We appreciate your attendance and request your respectful attention. We welcome your comments during the Matters from the Floor section of the agenda. If you signed up to address a specific action agenda item, you will be called at that time. Finally, I would like to remind you that it is the mission of Northeast to challenge and encourage each student to achieve and demonstrate academic excellence, technical skills, and responsible citizenship. Item 5, Invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. A, Legacy of Educational Excellence High School. Mr. Crow.
This is so exciting. Normalcy.
Come on up. Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Micah, members of the executive staff, and guests, it is my pleasure to introduce two of our outstanding students from Legacy of Educational Excellence High School. Our first student who will be presenting our inspirational thought tonight is Diego Robbins. He's a senior. I made sure to invite seniors because we want to do that for our 2021 graduates.
Thank you.
He is one of our STEM students. He was a SUMA graduate. He's obviously an NHS and also played tennis during his time at Lee High School. And Diego will be attending the University of Texas next year. As an OU fan, but I did let that go. Joining us tonight are Diego's parents, Ricard and Andrea Robbins. Ashlyn Pipes will be presenting our pledges tonight. She is also a senior from NISA. She's a SUMA graduate and also an NHS member. And Ashlyn will be attending Sam Houston State University next year and still kind of looking at different options with performing arts, but definitely putting her NISA experience to work. And joining us tonight is Ashlyn's mother, Monica. Diego is going to lead us with the inspirational thought, and then Ashlyn will lead us in the pledges to the American flag and the Texas flag. So at this time, will everyone please rise?
Good evening, Dr. Micah, NEISD Board of Trustees, and distinguished guests. My name is Diego Robbins. I stand before you today a confident, curious, compassionate senior. I'm excited for my life after graduation, more specifically life at UT Austin for the next 4 years. I know that I now possess the skills needed to not only survive in the outside world, but make a difference in it. However, I wasn't always this way. 4 years ago, I entered high school, a shy, insecure, but still curious freshman. I'd like to think that I've made some pretty substantial progress in terms of personal growth, but it's no surprise what caused it. Over the past 4 years, teachers, clubs, and principals, and the opportunities that they have provided me with are what I attribute my growth to. Whether it was my world history teacher encouraging me to try Model United Nations, my tennis coach choosing me to be the next varsity captain, or my STEM director, Mrs. Jensen, having the faith in me to give this invocation. My NEISD high school experience has been full of people guiding my excitement, nurturing my curiosity, and giving me the confidence to be a leader. For this, I'm eternally grateful. Now, as you move on into your meeting covering any number of important topics, I want you to remember this. What starts in this boardroom trickles down. If you engage in your discussions here with excitement, curiosity, and compassion, then I'm confident that those same values will matriculate down into your schools, and maybe even into another shy, insecure freshman. Thank you.
That was awesome.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
And we have certificates, Diego and Ashley. If y'all will come forward. We're going to take a picture. Yes, Mr. Leos.
It's just so good to see our
I know, it's
students
awesome
back.
to see.
Outside? No. Smile. Yeah.
Thank you all so much for being here. This is the first board meeting where we've had students do the invocation and pledge, and it's so exciting to have y'all back. And
It's been a year. and it's
yeah,
not been fun.
we're excited to have kiddos back here. And Diego, again, congratulations.
I'd also like to say, I know you've got a lot of recognitions this evening. We're hoping to be back next month with the state championship this weekend, so thank you guys.
Yeah. So thank you, Ashlyn and Diego. Appreciate it. Item 6, recognitions. A, All Service Cyber Patriot, 13 National Runner-Up Champions and National Cisco Network Academy Challenge, third place, Roosevelt High School JROTC. Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you, President Grona, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. Good evening. I have the honor of introducing 3 different recognitions tonight. First, I'd like to invite Colonel Robert Henson, Director of Army Instruction, to the podium for the first agenda item.
Good afternoon, Madam President, members of the board, executive staff, parents, our campus administration. Thank you for being here. It's a great pleasure for me to be here this evening to celebrate the accomplishments of a select group of great student cadets you have provided with opportunities for success in the support of JROTC programs, the ETA programs, and the data programs at Theodore Roosevelt High School. I might add that the sponsors of Cyber Patriot, the Air Force Association and all of its affiliated partners, are now soliciting for Cyber Patriot 14 teams to register. We've got lots of activity this summer. There will be camps, there will be tutorial sessions, and our folks are ready to go. After they introduce themselves, I think you will see we're in great shape for Cyber Patriot 14. At this time, I'd take the opportunity to introduce you to Major Jamel Garner, the Senior Army Instructor at Roosevelt High School, who will introduce these youngsters to you.
Good afternoon, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, special guests watching from room 313, and I would be absolutely remiss not to mention the wind beneath our wings, Mr. Norwood and Mr. Lozano, my campus president. As Colonel Henson said, I'm Major Jamel Garner. I'm the Senior Army Instructor for the Roosevelt JROTC Battalion, the largest battalion in the district. We're very proud. Could not be more honored to be here this evening as I began to introduce to you our Cyber Patriot Nationals winners. So to begin, I would like to introduce Mrs. Dahlia Pulido. She is our current year's coach who will kind of take over from Mr. Josh Beck. We are absolutely honored to have her here, and the team It's just, we wouldn't be here without her. So, Miss Dahlia Polito.
Thank you.
Next up is Mr. Josh Beck. I think you guys all know him very well. He's been our previous year's coach in the last 3 years. So this year we are second place in the Cyber Patriot All Service. Last year we had 2 teams that were first and third place nationally. And then in 2019, we were third place nationally. So thank you again to Mr. Josh Beck for getting us there.
Thank you.
Yes. All right, so the first cadet that I would like to bring in is Cadet Captain Tristan Lee.
My name is Cadet Captain Tristan Lee. Hello, everyone in the board, and I'm a junior at Theodore Roosevelt High School, and this is my 3rd year competing.
Okay, next up is Cadet Captain Francisco Rodriguez.
My name is Cadet Captain Francisco Rodriguez. I'm a junior at the Design Technology Academy, and this will be my 5th year competing.
All right, and then we have Cadet Sergeant Julian Pena.
Good afternoon. My name is Cadet Sergeant Julian Pena. I'm a junior at the Design Technology Academy. This is my 6th year in Tesoro Drive.
Cadet Sergeant Rosalind Schnabel.
Good afternoon. My name is Tesoro Drive. I am a junior at the Engineering Technologies Academy, and this is my 3rd year.
And then we have Cadet Sergeant Alex Bryant.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cadet Sergeant Alex Bryant. I am a senior at the Engineering Technologies Academy, and this is my 4th year as Over Patrons.
All right, my colleague, Cadet Master Sergeant retired Marshantia Johnson. She is the sponsor for the JRTC Cyber Patriot team.
Sergeant Johnson, I have worked with at Roosevelt for the last 7 years now. I'm sorry if I am not doing well. I love this district and that school, and I am honored to work with this group of kids and those coaches.
Okay, so I could not let any of these fine people leave the room without letting you know that Master Sergeant Johnson is also the Army Instructor of the Year. So big kudos to her. Most of the cadets that you see before you are ranked either like 3rd, 4th, 5th in their class. They all will graduate and have top secret security clearances. They've all been offered internships with Northrop Grumman. They've all won in excess of $3,500 in scholarships already. So I just couldn't be more proud of the group of students that you see before you. I'm honored to be their senior Army instructor and just want to make sure you guys are reassured great things are coming out of Roosevelt.
Parents, it's a great time for a photo. Don't be bashful.
If you want that right, you gotta.
Oh my, I get it today?
Just a side note, 2 of these team members are currently working on their security clearance. Now, how many high schoolers do you know that have a security clearance? It's amazing what their future holds for them.
Congratulations. And for anybody that got to see the Mayor's Cup, all these folks were recognized as part of the Mayor's Cup celebration. And I know that a lot of the kids from Roosevelt actually helped mentor a lot of the middle school kids, which was fantastic. I actually got to listen to my daughter listen to the folks that were mentoring her. She's over at Kruger. And I know they had a couple of all-female teams that were recognized in the city as well. And I know there's other middle schools and everything doing the same thing. So to the teachers, the instructors, and the students who are teaching the next generation, it's fantastic to see that. So yeah, they did. And they were organized. They had the kids, they kept their attention, which is hard to do with a bunch of 12 to 13-year-olds. So yeah, so congratulations. Yep.
Thank y'all. Congratulations again.
Rider pride is alive.
Rider pride. Okay, item B, swimming state team and individual recognitions. Johnson High School, Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you, President Grona, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. For our second recognition, I would like to invite Mr. Gary Comelander, principal of Johnson High School, to the podium to address this agenda item.
Can anybody see if Mr. Comelander's outside? Okay.
There he is. Come on in, Mr. Comeland.
All right. Well, good evening. We got everyone in. Good evening, President Grona, members of the board, Dr. Micah, members of the executive staff, and all of our guests, many of you virtually. It is my pleasure to introduce and celebrate these young ladies at Claudia Taylor Lady Bird Johnson High School. This is the part of our girls swim team that went to state. We had a large team, but they're the ones that represented us in this state meet. And with us here today, we have two seniors. First, Samantha Robles, Ria Sahota. Two juniors, Michaela Moore, Elsa Musselman, and two sophomores, Jada Scott and Lena Beach. These six ladies plus two alternates, Kaylee Beach and Michelle Parsons, made up the group that went to state, where they competed with the best and ran neck and neck the entire night, first or second place as a team, to end up as the second place team, silver medal overall in 6A. There were a lot of remarkable things that these young ladies did over the 2021 season. The first being that they won district and regionals in back-to-back years, all these ladies last year, to then proceed on to state as younger ones last year, but this year to take second place. On the medal stand, our 200 free relay with Michaela, Lena, Elsa, and Jada set a new all-time state record, not only 6A, but the overall state record. And it was kind of a pleasure to be able to break the Woodlands, who used to have it 12 years ago. They swam a 1 minute, 33.3 second 200 free relay. Awesome job. Congratulations, ladies. Also, our 200 medley relay of Jada, Ria, Samantha, and Michaela took first place in the gold medal. And then individually on the platform, Jada took second place in the 200 individually medley and 100 freestyle. These girls also earned 4 more races of points and another relay to end up the night. They did a lot of great accomplishments. Coach Snelson, who's here with them, Jesse Snelson, is in his 20th year and his 8th year of coaching swim at Johnson High School, and we're very proud of what he has done with these young ladies. And the final thing, we couldn't have done all this without their parents. They couldn't come in, but if we wave back to them, thank you very much up on the third floor, because they are a very, very supportive group of what these young ladies do. And they make it known not only in the pool, but everything they do on campus and with their grades. Thank you.
Congratulations. Can I give these to you and you can just do them? That may not be your real one.
Don't open them. Hold the picture.
One more picture till the J, yeah. Ladies, y'all got it? All right, here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Got you.
Congratulations again.
Thanks, y'all. Good job.
Okay, item C is swimming state individual recognitions, Reagan High School. Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you again, President Drona, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. This is my last introduction for recognitions, and I would like to invite Mrs. Brenda Shelton, principal of Reagan High School, to the podium for this agenda item.
She's
Strike
in her
them, Brenda.
green. I don't think she's going to pass for Johnson.
Madam
No, not at
President,
all.
Madam President, Dr. Micah, members of the board and executive staff, it is my pleasure and my honor to introduce two outstanding young individuals. We have Morgan Bartley, who competed in the breaststroke and won at state, and this young lady is going to Rice.
Oh, wow.
And we have Mr. Luke Pryor, and they say that at the swimming, it's just like that. And he competed in the freestyle, and he's going to be going to LSU. Both of these young people are to be commended, and they're wonderful young people. I apologize that their coach is not here, but he fell ill today and has fever. So I said, please don't come.
Yes.
So with that being said, thank you for recognizing them. We appreciate them.
Congratulations. Honey, you keep lowering it and raising it. Congratulations again. Item D, Kids Involvement Network, Ken 30th Anniversary. Mr. Clary.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests, Dr. Caprica Wells is making her way to the podium for this recognition.
It's fun.
Good evening, President Grona, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. I'm Caprica Wells, Executive Director of Adult and Community Education. It is my pleasure to begin the celebration of our KIN, no S, program. Kids Involvement Network has served in NEISD for 30 years. Originally established as a pilot program, it was the 13th to be started in the nation. It opened up at Ed White and Wood Middle Schools, serving 75 students. It is currently at all elementary and middle schools and normally serves over 5,000 students. COVID has hit us, and we are currently serving around 2,400 students. We had to make some changes, but continue to bring the excellence like only KIN can. We have a short video of that service.
One word I would use to describe this KIN program is amazing.
KIN was a lot more than just an after-school program. I made a lot of really close friends there, and a lot of the staff became like family to me. They cared more, not just because it was a job, but also just they cared for us as kids. They would ask us how our day was, how our family life was, because there were some kids, who maybe did not have the best family life, and they would actually show that they cared.
The KIN program, it's really helped me as a 9-to-5 mom for after school care. I wouldn't have any other option besides KIN. And with this program, my son has been getting additional education, getting guest speakers, and learning additional things outside of school.
15 es uno de los mejores programas que yo he estado porque en vez de ser como divertido también es fácil de aprender en él y también no es como que te deja la libertad de hacer todo, también puedes hacer como tienes que seguir las reglas o si no, no es todo como tú digas, Anel, es como tienes que seguir las reglas y te puedes divertir.
What I like about KIN is that the way the teachers, their personality and the way they talk to us, it inspires us to have all this commotion and have joy for the day that we're gonna have at KIN, and it just it tells us what a good person they are and their good personality.
2 of my kids are both at Canyon Ridge Elementary, and due to the pandemic, the KIN Teacher Initiative program allowed me to be able to come back to my job, to a safe environment, knowing that my children were going to be taken care of as well. And it was very hard for us as teachers knowing what would our kids actually be dealing with, what would happen to them. And what was nice was how, with the Teacher Initiative, that we were able to come to school, drop off our kids, and I knew my sons were going to be taken care of. For a lot of us parents, I will be honest, we broke down and cried because we care about our kids, and it's been a scary time. But through that, in a situation that we all had to deal with to get back to our jobs, to do what was best for even our students that we teach every day, I felt at ease every day knowing my kids were here on campus over at Reagan. And all of that ran flawless, and that's because the KIN program did a wonderful job of being able to support us, so I'm very grateful for it. KIN means a lot to me. My children love KIN. They love the people that they work with. For a parent, a teacher who has education in mind, that helps us to know that our kids are in the right spot. So 30 years of KIN to me means 30 years of parental peace of mind.
What I love about KIN is that we have some sayings about kindness, and just almost everyone in here is kind, and the KIN staff members is kind.
For me, working with KIN for 16 years allowed me to walk into my classroom ready to begin. I was able to implement positive behavior management, CHAMPS, and the 7 habits for the kids. Getting to be a part of KIN for so long allowed me to practice all these things and get ready, building relationships with students, building relationships with parents, and just my overall management of classroom. I think my transition would have been a lot harder if I hadn't done any of those things.
My name is Ashley Wilkes. I am the CCMR specialist here at Reagan. Prior to this position, I was the co-op teacher for 6 years, and that is how I got involved with the KIN organization. I had students who came to me and wanted to work for KIN who knew they wanted to pursue education as a profession after college. So it really opened their doors and opened their eyes to what does that actually look like on a day-to-day basis.
I hold KIN very near and dear to my heart because I started there as a KIN director when I was finishing up my graduate degree at UTSA, and just the opportunity to see that carryover from the school day to after school really made me very, very proud to be a part of this extension of learning and to have that opportunity to have more hands-on times to connect with kids, to talk to them about their school day, to help them with their schoolwork. Really was a very rewarding and privileging way for me to start my career as an educator. So I love KIN.
30 years of education.
30 years of partnerships.
30 years of real life working experience for our students.
30 years of awesome.
30 years of amazing staff.
30 years of homework help.
30 years of building the foundation.
30 years of excellence.
30 years of activities. 30 years of fun. 30 años de amigos.
30 years of enrichment.
30 years of connection, 30 years of kin. What an exciting time to be a part of any ISD's Kids Involvement Network. To have the opportunity to serve along with the great colleagues and staff of this department has been amazing. Congratulations to 30 years of service to the communities in Northeast ISD, and welcome to the next 30 years of excellence.
So at this time, I would like to publicly acknowledge and recognize our kin coordinators who tirelessly work with our students in engaging and learning in fun ways. With us this evening is Brittany King, who has been with kin for 8.5 years, Kelly McLean, who has served us for 7 years, Jay Tillman, 8.5 years as well, Nicole Mendez, who has been with kin for 12 years, and we don't have seniors, we have seasoned people, Linda Sanchez, who has been with us for 18 years. We thank you for your continued support and would like to give you a brag board and a mask as tokens of appreciation. Aww. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was an awesome video. Thank you. Appreciate it. Oh, that is super cute. Yeah. Thank y'all, and thank y'all for being here. Appreciate that. Thanks for everything that you do for our kids. Item 7, matters from the floor. The trustees welcome comments from members of the public during this time of the meeting. Generally, board members do not respond to public comments during the meeting, although members may request further information or a future agenda item on a matter raised during public comment. As explained fully in the board's written procedures for this time, the matters from the floor portion is a limited public forum. Accordingly, speakers may present on a topic related to district business for up to 3 minutes, but are not permitted to make 1, personal complaints about an individual staff or board member that should be raised using district's grievance policies, 2, a personal action, 3, a student disciplinary matter, 4, a complaint about a particular student, 5, or pending litigation. Any person who persists in speaking on these topics after being directed not to do so will lose the remainder of their time to speak and may lose their privilege of addressing the board at future meetings. We also welcome written comments at any time, either through email at board@neisd.net or by mail, care of the Superintendent's Office at 8961 Tesoro Drive, 6th floor, San Antonio, Texas, 78217. Miss
Patsy Esterline.
Okay. Oops. Okay.
Good evening, President Grona, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. I'm Patsy Esterline, President of the Northeast AFT. Our address is 10615 Parambidal, Suite 203, San Antonio, Texas, 78217. Regarding COVID-19 protocols and safety plans you will vote on tonight, Northeast AFT urges you to put the health and safety of the students, their families, and the employees first. To do this means to follow the science and common sense. Require the wearing of a mask and socially distancing. There are also many students and staff that should not return in person because of their health. Will their health needs be honored? Will there be protections for them? As we mentioned in our email to you last week, will air quality be addressed at each school and work site? This would include bringing more air into classrooms to dilute the virus. Ensure ample airflow in each room so contaminated air does not blow from one person to another. Install MERV 13 or better filters in central HVAC and unit ventilators. And make CO2 monitors available for classrooms to ensure that CO2 levels are below 1,000 ppm. We appreciate your concerns for our students, their families, and our employees. We will almost certainly undergo another surge of infections from variants, so please be vigilant and keep health and safety as the priority. Thank you.
That's what I wanted to find out. Thank you. Bill LeBrere.
What name is it called?
The Bill LeBrere. Chief, number 2 signed up to speak to the COVID-19 protocols, so they'll be called at that agenda item. Thank you.
Needs a mask.
Good evening, and thank you for your time. I'm Bill LeBrera. On March 2nd through email, I requested any information regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings, programs, and/or plans of its implementation. The following day, I spoke with Superintendent Jarrett. He indicated there have been ongoing discussions and stated some schools within the district have different needs compared to others. And I'll get back to that in a moment. I subsequently emailed President Grona and the Board of Trustees. I asked about the planning, implementation, committees formed, trainings conducted for teachers, staff, and any education programs for students regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. On March 4th, President Grona responded that there are no such committees at this time. President Grona also said she would ask Dr. Micah to answer any questions regarding training district staff have received. I have not received a response. Perhaps it's because there have been no trainings conducted. I don't know, but I'd like to know definitively. I also requested if any contractors and/or consultants are involved in the formulation of such training. Again, I haven't received a response. Furthermore, I'd appreciate what sources you are referencing when formulating such trainings. Now, there is no doubt that diversity and inclusion, at least on a surface level of understanding, appear beneficial. However, when I hear the word equity, it causes me concern. Equity is not equality, and as Superintendent Jarrett indicated, some schools within the district have different needs. I ask why. What is the basis of these different needs? I suspect the different needs within the school district is based upon race, gender, or any other alleged aggrieved group. My concerns: what does this mean for our children? How are they going to be treated by educators? Is a student's identity group a determinant factor? And what are they going to be taught? Much of diversity, equity, and inclusion falls under the guise of critical race theory, which calls itself anti-racist, but it blatantly practices anti-Asian and anti-white group stereotyping, group smearing, and group retribution. They claim that the only remedy for past discrimination is present discrimination. I hope you're not going down this road for our students and adding this divisive ideology to the curriculum. I hope I can get some answers on what is being planned and what has already been implemented. Thank you for your time.
Item 8, presentations. A, future of virtual learning in NEISD. Mr. Jarrett.
Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Micah, members of the board and executive staff. This agenda item is actually more of a conversation as well as a presentation. As you guys are fully aware, this past year we have been embracing this idea of what it looks like to learn virtually as well as in person. As we move forward, and hopefully as post-COVID approaches, is that we have to consider whether virtual learning will continue to exist in our district going forward. And so tonight, what we would just like to bring forward to you is this idea of if it's possible, how it will possibly look, and potentially some questions that we need to answer. So I would like to ask Jennifer Gutierrez and Dr. Susan Diaz to come forward to address the PowerPoint presentation.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. This evening, we are here to discuss the information we currently have available regarding the future of virtual learning in NEISD. And we want to start with some background information. As you recall, in March 2020, we were shut down for the last 9 weeks of school and forced to offer remote learning for all of our students. We are proud of all of our educators' efforts as we pivoted and adjusted on the spot to provide remote learning options for the first time. Our CNI specialists converted all in-person lessons in our instructional planning guides for the last 9 weeks of school into a format that teachers could deliver and share via Seesaw and Google Classroom. We learned many valuable lessons during those 9 weeks. We used feedback from our teacher and parent surveys to adjust our virtual learning model, which we piloted during summer school. Moving into the fall, TEA did not require us to offer virtual instruction, but we felt that offering a virtual option was essential to support our NEISD families' diverse needs. Due to the health school risk levels in August of 2020, we started school in a 100% virtual setting. Our schedules included a blend of synchronous and asynchronous time, which was an adjustment from the end of the 2020 school year. Teachers had to teach students concurrently during the phase-in period. At secondary, due to the sheer volume of course offerings, most teachers continue to use a concurrent model to teach both virtual and in-person learners simultaneously. At elementary, we were able to designate in-person and virtual teachers at most of our sites. We created a virtual hub that allows a teacher to teach virtual students from multiple school sites. We have encouraged our families to return to in-person learning, as we know in-person learning is the best setting for most of our students. As the in-person numbers continue to increase, it has become challenging to keep the in-person and virtual teachers separated. At elementary school, some have started to adjust to concurrent teaching. An example would be a campus may have 3 third-grade teachers, 2 are in-person teachers, 1 is a virtual teacher, but they may only have 6 to 10 virtual learners now. So they would reach out to our office and ask if we can place the 6 to 10 students in a virtual hub, which means a virtual teacher across the district that would have room for those students. And if that's not possible, then the teacher would have to concurrently teach the in-person and virtual students. Currently, as a district, we have 40.6% of our students still receiving virtual instruction. At the elementary, we have 26%. At the middle school, it is 40%. And at the high school level, we have 60%. So based on the percentages of students that remain in a virtual setting and the feedback and questions we have received from parents and families, we know many families would like to see a virtual learning option continue to be offered in the future. So how can NEISD offer virtual learning next year? As soon as virtual learning became our reality, we actively researched the only 2 models available to Texas districts. We first reached out to the only virtual school in Texas, rated an A, which is iUniversity Prep in the Grapevine-Colleyville district in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Our department met with the director via Zoom, where she shared her virtual learning journey with us. She talked about the requirements of operating a school under the Texas Virtual School Network. Students have to be enrolled the entire school year in order for the district to receive funding. So for example, if a child starts the first day of school and they move out of state mid-November, our district would not receive any funding for that. So the child would have to be enrolled for the entire school year in order for the district to receive funding. The district only receives half-day ADA, although the students receive a full day of education. Additionally, students have to pass their classes in order for the district to receive funding. By passing, students have to receive a 70% or above in each of the courses. Students are not allowed to participate in UIL at this campus, and virtual instruction is only offered for students in grades 5 through high school. Next, we reached out to TA for further guidance, and they confirmed that if we went the virtual school network option, ADA would be at half day. The application process for becoming a partner with the virtual school network closed in 2012. TA shared that there was a high probability of the application window opening again Our only option that they shared would be available to us is to wait for the legislative action or the commissioner rule for that process to open up again. The process to apply for an in-district charter closed in mid-January, and we found out about that option about a week before that application was due. So our only option to offer virtual learning would be to wait from the legislative session or commissioner rule, which Dr. Diaz is going to talk about.
So as Jennifer just stated, the two ways we can operate a virtual school in any ISD is through legislative action or commissioner rule. We have not yet heard from the commissioner, but there are several bills in both the House and the Senate, and I'm sure that Deb Caldwell could speak more eloquently to this, but I'm going to attempt to do it. In a recent TEA webinar, we were told that we would have an answer about virtual learning by May 31st, which we know is kind of late in the planning process. So before you are two bills filed during the current legislative session. We chose to highlight these two bills because they have the most support behind them, and Dr. Micah suggested to us that these are the more prominent ones. On the left, we have House Bill 1468, and it's sponsored by Keith Bell. And on the right, we have Senate Bill 27, and it's sponsored by Larry Taylor. There are some distinct differences between the two proposed bills. Bell's bill affords the most more control to the district, while Taylor's puts control of courses and curriculum in the hands of the commissioner. Bell's bill limits enrollment to third grade and above, while Taylor's allows for K-12 virtual learning. Bell's limits enrollment to only students within the boundaries of the district, while Taylor's would open it up. So students would be allowed to choose to go to any district within the state of Texas. Taylor's bill also allows for non-public school children, such as homeschooled or privately schooled children, to enroll in participating districts. And finally, some other caveats in Bell's bill is that it allows districts to partner together and form an MOU. So, for example, we could partner with Northside to provide a virtual learning school together with an MOU. It's up to us to determine whether students participate in UIL. But the one thing that it does is it prohibits concurrent teaching, and we know that that's not best for kids. That wasn't the ideal situation, and so we agree with that 100%. So we have questions right now. This is where we are. And as a district, these are some questions that we need to consider before moving forward. And as we wait for either the commissioner's rules or the legislature to approve one of the many bills currently being considered, and I'm going to put on my glasses and try and read that. Oh, yeah. Okay, so some of the things that we're thinking about, again, because those two bills are very different. So you've got one bill that's K-12, and then you've got another bill that's 3-12. We know that Grapevine Colleyville, who's very successful, only takes in 5-12. So those are things that we are looking into. Will we allow virtual students to participate in extracurriculars? Will the state provide half or full day funding for virtual school? So that's a big deal. Right now, Grapevine Colleyville only gets half day funding, but they've chosen to go ahead with it because they knew they had a certain clientele that a lot of the kids there, I think, are like semi-professional athletes, like gymnasts and things like that. So they knew their population needed a school environment like that. How will we staff a virtual school? What resources would we need to provide, such as will we provide the laptops? Will we provide Wi-Fi? You know, how far down the road can we go with the resources the kids need in order to create equity? What courses will we offer at the secondary level, specifically high school, because there's so many courses at the high school level that we are unable to offer all of them. So then we'll have to make choices based on whatever it is that you all want. And again, the most important part is this row at the bottom. What are the characteristics of a virtual learner? It's important that these kids have certain skills so they're successful. We don't want to set the children up for failure. So what are the characteristics that will define a child that will succeed in this environment? How about the teacher? What kind of skills does the teacher need to have? And what supports will the parents have to survive for their kids in order for them to thrive in this environment?
So as we continue to consider all of those options and have more information from the commissioner or legislative session, we will utilize a design team to help build a dynamic plan that meets the needs of our virtual learners. Last summer, when a virtual school seemed like a possible option, we did begin planning for it. We created a design team at that time that consisted of campus administrators, teachers, and central office staff from various departments. So we are ready to reassemble that team as soon as we have more information from the legislative session. And as Susan said, last week we attended a webinar from TEA, and they encouraged districts to begin planning because May 31st is late. So if there are some plans in place, then it would be we would be able to assemble those quickly and make any refinements that we needed to make. So they did encourage that. So our CNI team is working behind the scenes to stay current on any news and explore possible options. And we will ensure that all of our stakeholders have a voice in the design of the virtual school if we decide to move in that direction. And we will definitely present a coherent plan to you when we get more information. So at this time, we want to thank you for your time and open it up to any questions.
Yeah. So, Madam President, if I may, before you start to ask some questions, I just want to explain this presentation. So I wanted to make sure that everybody on the board understood that virtual learning has a real path forward. I think, as I've spoken to many people around the community, I think a lot of people think it was going to go away after this year. It is very clear in my discussions with the commissioner, this is not going anywhere. This is going to continue. The real question then becomes, to their point of these questions that they posed, is one, I don't believe it will be mandatory that we have to provide it. All right. I think that will be a local decision that is made, depending, of course, as you can see, on whose bill gets through. You may have read already out there that there are districts they've already passed their virtual plans for next year. I reached out to a couple of them and asked, how did you do that? Well, we're ready to change it if we should. We're not going to bring you a plan that we don't know meets the requirements for whatever the state lays out for us, right? So I guess the thing that, if we decide to move forward with virtual learning, because this is a question that I get, Ms. Chancellor, in fact, when we did one of our Facebook Lives, this was a very popular question, is what is the future of it? I think our community needs to know that is something that has a real opportunity to move forward. I just believe that one of these bills or a commissioner rule is going to happen, that this will continue. I think then the decision for districts will be, are they going to provide it or are they not? And then it really sets up some, I think if you decide to do it, you really have to set up some parameters, because this is simply not good for everyone. I can tell you stories about teachers, administrators, counselors going to doors, and as we've gone out, and we've been doing this now for many, many months, trying to encourage kids back, especially the ones that aren't doing well, and we're told, they won't come back. Even though that they're failing, the parent is not allowing that child to come back for a myriad of reasons, all right? And so the thing becomes, do you really want to leave the door that wide open to let anybody choose it when we know? But if you clamp back, if in Taylor's bill, some things that we don't know is if we deny access to virtual learning because we say, Mr. Leos, you don't meet the requirement as a virtual learner, is that going to mean that you can say, well, that's too bad, I'm going to go to another district then? And here's the problem in that thinking, is that, let's say, Mr. Leos, we can clearly see through the data that we've gathered this year that you are not a good virtual learner. You're not doing well. Your attendance is great. You have a 98% attendance rate, but your engagement level is very low and your grades are poor, all right? I'm sorry, Mr. Lay. I was going to pick on you, but you're an educator, and so you've heard some of these things before.
It's the truth. I'm not good at that.
So the thing is, so Mr. Leos's parent says, you know what, I'm not going to go. I'm going to choose a different district. So they leave. Well, how many times are they going to get to bounce around? And see, eventually, here's my fear that Mr. Leos falls further behind. And when a parent or finally or maybe Mr. Leos says, I need to do something different, where are they going to come back to school? They're going to come back to their home school. And now those gaps may be even worse. And so it will be very interesting to see how this system gets established and the parameters that are allowed and how much control we have versus how much is going to be placed on some folks to allow them the freedom to do some stuff. Because, board, you've all heard me say this. We have to be so careful that we don't create a system that fails kids. I've been worried about virtual learning for a long time, simply because it has some benefit for a small number of kids. It really does. I've told you about my own two. One thrived in it and one did not. So I think it has a place, but I'm much more for Keith Bell's bill than I am for Senator Taylor's bill. So with that, I'll turn it over for any questions.
Okay, I just have one question. Dr. Micah, you did answer a handful of the ones I had, so thank you very much. I have a question and a comment. And so I'm curious to know if Grapevine Colleyville allows for UIL participation for those students.
They do not.
They
do not offer UIL.
Okay, and then the other is just a comment. I think about the timing of this, and then I think about our budget. And, we are early on. Our fiscal year ends earlier than most districts. And so I think about Dan and Brian and Susie and your team and trying to make those changes to accommodate for half of ADA with
That's
that's
if they fund it half day. See, they haven't made that determination yet, Ms. Winkley. See, these are the things that we don't know. Once again, we're kind of flying in the wind. We don't know that yet. They may choose, as they did this year, to fully fund it. Again, these are all questions we're kind of all waiting on, which is why we're not coming to you with a plan.
Right.
Because we simply don't know it.
Well,
I think yes to the budget piece that you're bringing up, but more importantly, I think our parents deserve answers.
Yes.
And so, the sine die is coming up in May, but that doesn't mean they're going to have decisions reached. So we may not have decisions until June.
Okay.
So parents may not know until July, because once the bill passes, as those of you that have been through bills lots, it takes a while to figure them out, right? All the little loopholes and things. So that's what's going to be interesting, Ms. Winkley.
Well, I think that, and I appreciate, and again, am very thankful, and it's always great to give praise that we were thinking forward and had a team in place to start thinking about what virtual learning might look like for families who may choose to do so. So thank you very much.
So I just had one question, or just comment for consideration. I didn't really see it. So as far as teachers, I saw you had characteristics of a virtual teacher. So would we hire virtual teachers or just change some of the current teachers to become virtual, or ask teachers to volunteer to go to virtual? How would?
D, all the above.
Okay.
So really, as we're trying to build this plane while we're flying it, we're having to think through all of those factors, because depending on the number of kids who elect to go into virtual, that essentially changes the staffing formula for that particular campus. And we would then have to absorb those teachers into the virtual school. But even with that being said, we of course would want teachers to apply for that, because if that's something they're passionate about and they're good at it, we want to still give those virtual kids the best experience they can get. So it's going to be a very interesting walk, is what I would say, for us to kind of find that right fit. But we feel it's important that we have a profile of a great virtual teacher, so that people can identify themselves that this fits me best as an educator.
And Ms. Williams, if I can just piggyback on that response, because it reminds me of something that Ms. Caldwell and I were working on today. So Representative Barbara Gervin-Hawkins, who I know you know very well, had asked us for some comments or some public testimony regarding a bill she has. And it's House Bill 370. So if you don't know this one, she's filed it in the past. But it's basically that when the commissioner changes a rule on accountability, that we're given 1 year before its implementation. Because right now, oftentimes, the rules will get changed right before kids are about to take a STAR and end a course, and then you don't even know the rule, right? So to Mr. Jarrett's, only in education, and I think, Ms. Winkley, you've heard me say, because you're in accounting, can you imagine trying to complete the taxes accurately when you've already filed some of your client's paperwork and suddenly you get the new tax code, right, already, and it's April 14th, one day before, the taxes are due. That happens in education all the time. It seems like we're handed things right and the rules change, and then we have to adjust very quickly. And this is yet another one of those times that this is what's going to happen, because we don't know the answers to some of those. I mean, we know that there are some teachers out there right now that are very good in this virtual format. They really are excellent. We know there are some teachers that want to do this but are not as adept at it. And so it really is, I know Ms. Gutierrez and Dr. Diaz have been really monitoring teachers' performance in these environments, so they would definitely have some say-so, as long as with the principals and Mr. Jarrett, because in the end, if this is the route we go, we owe it to our community and our kids to give the very best, because that's what they expect. So we would have to but these could be June decisions.
Do you foresee any differential in pay between a virtual teacher and an in-classroom teacher?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I don't believe so. The real question becomes, if it is funded at half-day ADA, now what? Now what? See, that's going to be the piece. Because if they're only working half the time, what's the other time going to be? Because that's not going to capture enough.
Thank you.
Madam President, I have one question. Are we looking at both a synchronous and asynchronous option that has happened, or would it just be synchronous only for the students? Or is that, I know there's lots of questions, but what does it look like? Or
We definitely are looking at synchronous and asynchronous because that live direct instruction is essential, but then the students would have opportunities to work asynchronously as a team or receive some small group or one-on-one instruction from the teacher during that asynchronous time while the students are working on an activity or project. So yes, it would be, we hope, very similar to what we offer with virtual learning and that blend of synchronous, asynchronous.
Okay. And how are y'all going to get parents' input? Because obviously it sounds like a very compressed timeline if this happens with May 31st. How are y'all going to incorporate that, especially the ones that have been virtual learning, to get those lessons learned from the parent side? Do you have a process in place?
Once we gather our design team, we would definitely share our plans with parents that have had students in virtual learning so they can share with us how they've been successful and how they've served almost as a learning coach to their children to support them at home so that they're monitoring assignments and making sure that the students have the support that they need. So we would definitely share the plans. And
Mr. Hilliard, I think that is extremely important in a virtual space. The parent will have to operate as a true partner in this work. And so we have some students who have been extremely successful in a virtual space, and so we would want to hear their input and what made their child thrive in that environment so we can replicate that experience. And so as we have a design team to put all the pieces together around the curriculum and instruction side of it, we also need that learning coach side of it, which is the parent's role. That child being at home with an adult is going to be very important, especially for the younger ones. And so what is that role? What does that look like? And if they can foster that environment for a child where they can thrive, we can also help replicate that in other homes that didn't do that maybe the first round.
Great, thank you.
And Mr. Hilliard, if I can just add on to that. So one of the things is we've had several parents reach out, and actually Mr. Jarrett has called them to talk about, these are parents that really want virtual learning, and so he's engaged them. I'm just trying to think of the one set of parents, right, that reached out. I think they're both doctors.
Yes, they are.
Correct? And so had a really good engagement about that and that discussion about it. And I want to clarify something because you brought it up. I think, and this is a good point, it's not going to look like it does now. I think that's the takeaway. It's not going to, so when we talk asynchronous, it is not like you can just go to school asynchronously all the time. That's not going to happen. That is not a good model. I would not bring that to you. If they bring that to me, I'm going to ask them to come and bring me a different model, because it needs to be synchronous. There are times for some asynchronous activity, and the way I think of that is like, we call it a gradual release in education. We do it with you, or we do it to you, so we show you, then we do it with you, and then you do it on your own. And I think that's where that asynchronous piece comes in. So I don't want you to walk away this evening thinking that asynchronous is going to continue on. That would not be a recommendation. In fact, what we see is most kids that are fully asynchronous are doing the poorest. There are a few kids that are doing it, but
It's very rare.
yeah,
It's very rare.
And unfortunately, the decisions that are being made for those students that are asynchronously are not always best for their education. Sometimes it's best for their home environment, and not necessarily with education in mind.
I had a couple, I don't know if they're necessarily questions, but more comments, and since this is kind of a discussion. I know, obviously we're looking at rolling out a brand new secondary schedule next year on top of looking into this, and I want to make sure we're not losing track of the detail of the secondary schedule that a lot of people have questions about, but then how this all dovetails together with virtual learning, asynchronous, synchronous, the new schedule.
Everything has to be coherent, and that's part of the conversation. And part of the reason why the schedule is still in the conversation and we're still soliciting feedback from people is because nothing has been finalized on that. And part of that is because we have to make sure all the pieces fit in the puzzle, and we can't do something in isolation. And so even if we put something on the table, kind of to Dr. Micah's point earlier, in education we're constantly adjusting and agile in our practices because we're confronted with new situations on a daily basis. And so we can't have a virtual school operating on one system, the in-person operating on another system, in the sense of a scheduling approach, because kids could end up back in school at any point. So we're having to be very careful and thoughtful in our process. And so all of that is being in consideration.
And including things like UIL and what happens with, even though we don't have a rank policy for these kids coming up, got top 10% versus those that are in person, and you can only take certain classes. So you guys have your work cut out for you. You're nodding your heads.
Mr. Byer, you are hitting upon all. Look, tonight, ladies and gentlemen, was really just a conversation. I want you all to understand what's coming down. I don't want you to be surprised by any of it. But that's correct, Mr. Byer, is that there are a lot of those pieces. And again, through it all, what we are trying to do, to both you and Mr. Hilliard's point, is to gather some parental feedback into it, because it's important. As we're looking at these new ways of kind of educating, whether it be a schedule, whether it be online learning or whichever, right? But again, what we're trying to do is take all these lessons that we've learned. If you think back when we had to create school in a week, entirely different than we've done for 70 years, it wasn't, it was great. It was good for the time, but it wasn't great. And so we learned a lot from it, and then we tried some stuff that summer, and I should say more than Jennifer and Susan did. And then we took those lessons from that summer and tweaked it into the fall. Yeah. And so we're continually learning from it and trying to make it better and to try to shore up areas where we can definitely see there are issues in it. But through it all is, and you're hitting on it, it's the communication outward to make sure that people understand everything. And that's why I wanted y'all to understand is that we may not know these answers until June.
Right.
Which is really going to be a challenge to go out and try to communicate this in a robust way. We're working on all of those things, but I think Commissioner Morass says it's the best. I'm with the government. I'm here to help. Not always is that helpful, by the way, but he does say it, and I do get a chuckle every time he does it. Because we're waiting on government.
Yeah.
That's what we're waiting on right now.
Well, and so kind of backing up a couple of steps, and I know we don't have any detail necessarily, but looking at models, I know we're looking at Texas with a couple of districts, but are we looking beyond the state of Texas to other agencies and the state? Are we looking at colleges, what's being successful? so that if we're going to make this work and we need to be going to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, we in the design team and their folks, they actually have been doing a lot of research right now, and so we don't know what will happen, but we'd also want to be prepared. And so as they meet as a design team and they have a group of folks, they do research on different states, cities, universities, et cetera, and they take all that information, they kind of try to see how does that fit within our system. So while they're building curriculum, they're worried about instruction, they're also doing research and development at the same time with something that may not even come into existence.
Sure.
But it's better to be prepared than unprepared, and so their effort is really to try to put us in a place where we can implement this if we need to at the last hour. We hope we don't have to do that at the last hour, but obviously it seems that that's what's going to happen. And so we still want to make that quality available to our families. And so these folks have really been doing a lot of research. And again, to Ms. Gutierrez's point earlier, we started these conversations way back in June of last year, anticipating what could be this year. But when you phase in, it kind of takes away that opportunity to do that. But that was necessary due to the circumstances of COVID. But we do have some starting points that we feel can anchor our approaches going forward.
Great. And then the last thing, I guess, dovetailing into that, any legislation having to do with infrastructure and how that's going to help support some of these initiatives, I guess, across the state. I know we talked in our legislative agenda that, this is one of the things that we want to support is making sure people have access to these things. And so hopefully somewhere at that state level, the government, as you said, somebody's talking about that.
Yeah, it is. That's one of Governor Abbott's priorities is the digital component. So there is definitely a lot of discussion around that. Like any legislative session, there are competing interests, right? So we'll just see which ones come out of it. But to their point, that's one of the pieces, right? Like, do you have to supply them a device? Do you have to get, we gave a lot of hotspots away, but we also know that hotspots aren't necessarily the best way to connect to the internet for real in-time instruction. So there's a lot of those pieces in there that still have to be worked out. But I think one of the discussions, at least that I've heard, is this concept of equity, is that if you're going to allow virtual learning and I don't have it at home, it's that fair but equal component, right? So it's really going to be interesting, Mr. Byer, to watch this all play out, and then for us to have to react to it. But they've been working really hard on it. We're having some guesses at what we think's going to come out, but as you can see, those two different bills are very different. One is saying it's K-1-2. One is saying it's not. Who wins? That's huge. And then if it's optional as a district, do you provide it K2 or do you not? Because there are consequences to each side of that if you do or you don't. All good questions that we'll keep figuring out.
That we'll keep working on.
Yeah.
All right.
It's pretty much what this year's been anyway.
Yeah. Feels like it. Thanks.
Anybody else? Anything else? All right, thank you all for the presentation and the heads up. Item 9, new business for possible board action. A, COVID-19 protocols and safety plan. 1, possible action regarding amendments to COVID-19 protocols and safety plan. Before I turn it over to Dr. Micah, Chief, will you get Mr. Rasmussen?
Good evening, Board. My name is Dick Rasmussen. I'm a citizen and resident of the District 5 of the NEISD. I'd like to address the protocols that you have on the agenda for COVID. I know the new proposed guidelines allow for students the option to wear or not wear a mask during recess, etc. But to me, masks should be optional for every student for the entire time on campus, no matter what the activity, classroom studies, lunch, recess, sporting events, musicals, the list goes on. Masks are not a protective measure against COVID. They are merely a placebo. In fact, anyone who wishes can look at the CDC website itself. They relate the current guidance based on community exposure for people exposed to others with known or suspected COVID-19 or possible COVID-19. If an individual has had close contact they should essentially quarantine for 14 days according to the CDC. However, they note specifically on their website that this is irrespective of whether the person with COVID-19 or the contact was wearing a mask or whether the contact was wearing respiratory PPE. So even their own website says that masks are ineffective. This is supported by the fact that when companies or groups are doing contact tracing for individuals that may have tested positive for COVID-19 or may have been a close contact, they never ask the next question after they find out who the close contacts are, were you wearing a mask? That question is never asked. Why is it not asked? Because it doesn't matter. It's ineffective. If masks were so effective, that would be the very next question out of their mouth, but it's not. I would tell you if masks are effective, this room right here wouldn't be set up like this. You'd have chairs everywhere and people just wearing masks, but that's not how it's done. It's not how it's done in the overflow rooms either. Why are masks ineffective? Quite simply because the virons of coronavirus are roughly 100 nanometers, 1/100,000th the width of a human hair, 1/30th the size of surgical mask filtrations. So surgical masks, not to mention cloth ones, do not help. This is why the CDC, when citing some randomized controlled trials, actually 10 of them, showed that no significant reduction in influenza transmission with the use of face masks. Additionally, masks get saturated with moisture from the mouth and nose after about 20 minutes. Once they're wet, they no longer form a barrier against viruses. This renders the day-long mask wearing in businesses, stores, and schools, as opposed to the short one-time use in clinical settings, a complete hazard to spread of bacteria and pathogens. I would also note that our students are wearing these masks for the whole day, breathing in additional carbon dioxide. They're not breathing in the normal oxygen that they would. It's a detriment to learning. It's a distraction. They shouldn't have to wear them. We also know that the average age of mortality for COVID-19 is 80 years old. The threat of COVID-19 to the youth is negligible, and these draconian measures, restrictions, and so-called guidelines only fosters fear and worry in our students. But the exact opposite should be true. We should not be teaching our youth to worry or fear, especially from a virus that has a 99.97 recovery rate. This is a time for leadership from the board to stand up to the fallacy and come against these COVID protocols. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Micah.
Thank you, Madam President. So, if you, I'm sure everyone recalls, back on April the 5th, last Monday, the staff presented to you all for at that time some recommendations to change to our COVID-19 protocols and our safety plan. As you all saw in your packet, those 9 modifications are clearly put in there for you all to read. This evening, we're coming to you for approval of those 9 changes to the COVID plan. Just as a reminder, these are things such as mask use at recess, PE, allowing visitors and things. We do not have, or I do not have as the administration, the authority to make these changes without the board approval because that is a plan that you all voted back in August.
Okay, thank you. So do I have a motion to approve the amendments to the COVID-19 protocols and safety plan as presented on April 5th, 2021 as
Madam
listed
President,
above?
can we have a conversation about this before we continue? Because I have a couple comments I'd like to ask. Can we have deliberation?
We can have discussion after I get the motion in a second.
Okay, thank you.
Do I have a motion to approve the amendments to the COVID-19 protocols and safety plan as presented on April 5th, 2021 as listed above?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Huey. Now we may have discussion.
Great. If I can go first, that'd be great. Thank you. First off, Dr. Micah, thank you for last week when you talked about the traditional end-of-year activities. I think that's critical as you transition back to normalcy, getting parents back on campus. My question to you would be, is there a process to ensure that campus principals don't unnecessarily cancel events? Are they going to have to get approval to cancel stuff? I don't want to build this expectation. Parents think they're going back to campus and then bike rodeo's gone or you pick the activity, senior picnic, et cetera.
Sure. So what I would, and I'm glad you brought that up, is one of the things, should you all vote to approve these this evening, all that I ask is you to give us tomorrow. Mr. Jimenez, myself, and the rest of executive staff would need to meet with principals to discuss those changes. So with that, as far as bike rodeo, I don't know where bike rodeo falls in the schedule. As far as end of the year awards, no, they're going to be told, hey, look, if you've had 5th grade awards at the end of the year, you're going to have them this year. You can figure it out, and here's the process. Health Services has been really good about looking through those. If there's any concerns on their part, they can send the plan to us. They can take a look at it. We'll take a look at it. But the expectation is that those are the things that happen. That's what we want to make sure that's clear, is that when we're talking about parents are allowed back to campus, they are allowed beginning, if you all vote tonight to approve it, starting Wednesday, and here's the process as you need to be. You should not be turning parents away. Now, can I tell you 100% that that's not going to happen? Absolutely not. I'd never tell you that. But all I would ask is when that does happen first, if it's a teacher issue, that parent reach out to the principal first. And then if it's a principal issue, that they reach out to Mr. Jimenez. Those are the things that we're going to address as they come up.
Okay, great. And I know we had a lot of discussion about data and studies, but there's not, conflicting opinions. The one question I asked you afterwards is about from the medical advisory committee that the district has. When do we move from pandemic to endemic? And I know that there's no clear criteria, but the medical community, we're talking about this, and we have to make a decision, the 7 of us. And did you ever get an answer back from them?
Actually, I did. Ms. Kelly, do you mind coming up and discussing what Dr. Reddick said to you? Because I can try to explain it, but I think it's probably best coming from you because he just answered that today.
Pull it up too and read it so I'm not misspeaking on his behalf. The overall idea that he shared was that moving from a pandemic to an endemic is indicative on not just one community or one area. It really is coronavirus became a pandemic worldwide, and it will move from pandemic to endemic when the situation is more controlled globally. So we will be getting that information. That won't be anything that we really have locally any influence on when that change is made or how we move specifically from one to the other. That's a global epidemiological decision that happens looking at how things are moving in the entire world.
Okay, thank you for that.
Sure.
I know we've all received lots of emails lately, and I think we've gotten down to, for me, it's 2 items, and it's not even a matter of do you like a mask or not, the effectiveness, because everybody has different studies and approaches. But I guess what I would like to hear from my fellow trustees is, this to me comes down to the scope and limit of our authority as trustees. We're sitting here tonight, and we're going to tell people to take a medical device, which is a mask, and mandate that we put this medical decision on 60,000 kids, or at least the ones that are going to school. And I know our responsibility is to be the voice of the parents in the community. And we obviously are supposed to guide the education of our kids and their academic performance. But everything else in the law that I've seen when it comes to schools and medical decisions belongs to the families. Is that correct understanding, Dr. Micah, that generally speaking, you can't, a principal or nurse can't even give a Tylenol to a high school freshman without a parent's approval, unless it's some sort of emergency?
So Mr. Hilliard, you did bring that up, the issue around, and I believe that you had emailed me several things, such as the Nuremberg Code and so forth. As if you'll recall, I asked you to reach out to Mrs. Groner or to Mr. Lopez. I don't know if you did or not. But I did speak to Mr. Lopez about those. I believe there were 4 specifically that you had asked. None of these are in violation of any of those codes.
Okay. So we are able to give medical advice. I guess that's my concern, is that the 7 of us are deciding medical decisions that, in my opinion, are parents' rights. And that's where I've been weighing this, trying to be impartial, because I've heard both sides of the community, trying to put my personal opinion aside. But so we have the legal authority to make medical decisions.
Sure. And Mr. Hilliard, again, those four legal components that you had emailed about, when I expressed those to Mr. Lopez and said, Mr. Hilliard may be reaching out to you, are there any worries whatsoever within this as to us mandating the use of face masks? And he said, no, there is no problems, that it is well within our rights and as a district to do it.
Okay. And then the other question is, for those that aren't aware, KDIC just got sued last week, right? Everyone's aware of that. The parents are suing over the mask mandate. They referenced 2 different things, which is the Texas Family Code and the Texas Constitution. Did Mr. Lopez provide input? Because I haven't seen anything. I don't know if the other trustees besides Mrs. Groner received any input, but as far as the legality of that.
I was actually aware of KDISD when it first popped up. There's a really stark difference between KDISD and what we do here. If the child does not wear the mask in Katy ISD, they send them to a virtual school. Period. We don't do that. That is the very difference between most districts and Katy. Katy is saying to the parent, if your child will not comply, they can no longer come to school. We don't do that. We handle it in a different route.
Okay, how do we handle it? I'm just
We
curious.
handle it like any other administrative directive at a campus when we expect them to follow. We tell kids don't cuss. If they cuss, we work progressive discipline. Same thing. It's just a refusal to follow an administrative directive.
Okay, thank you. I was just trying to get some clarity. If any of the other trustees have any inputs, because I'm new to the board, and I'm trying, this is, to me, is a big decision, because we're now invading parent rights, in my opinion, and I'm very hesitant to tell other parents what to do with their kids.
But we also tell parents they can't send their kids to school with purple hair. And we have an entire however many page handbook that explains to students and parents that they sign off on and they're encouraged to read that there are hundreds of things that they have to do. And I think in this situation with our own medical advisory board, the 400 emails that we've all gotten and we've read, I think 80% have said, I know that's only 400 people. And last week we had 24 people here and it was kind of split half and half. We provide guidelines to people and things that they have to follow on a daily basis. And if our attorney is telling us that we're not breaking the law and we are not doing anything that is against statutes and information that is going to put us in a position that we are going to have to that we can't defend, then I'm comfortable in the fact that we're doing something that is benefiting a lot of people. And there's, I guess in my opinion, there's a problem. There's a difference between a problem and an inconvenience. A problem is having cancer, not being able to eat, not being able to get to your job because you can't get your kid to school because this, that, or the other thing. And an inconvenience is wearing a mask and just doing what you can as a person to help other people. So we've gotten a lot of feedback on all this, and the information I have, the data that we're looking at, I think this is just one more step in what we're expecting our district to do. And I'm not going to put the burden back on the teachers to then have to make a decision as to, okay, if this mask is optional and this teacher has to decide this, and now you got a parent mad at the teacher. Our teachers are dealing with enough. Our principals are dealing with enough. I don't think it's fair to put them in a position where they have to now decide, is this okay? I can't remember if this kid is supposed to wear a mask. I don't know if they're supposed to. So I understand what you're saying as far as giving people, you feel as if we're infringing on their rights. Well, we have a whole handbook of things that they could nitpick and we could say we're infringing on their rights. And so I'm not suggesting anybody do that. However, there are things in there that I'm sure that people will disagree with. This just happens to be the most visible and the most current thing that everybody's looking at. So in talking to my own kids who are students, their friends, they just want to go to school and learn. So
No, I appreciate the commentary. And
they don't. Yeah, they got problems. We all hate mess. I'm dealing with this at my office too. We only have 20 people, so we're trying to figure out: do we keep doing this? Do we not keep doing this? We have an open office concept, and it's a difficult conversation. But it's if we can do this now, let's just get it over with.
I was trying to I appreciate it, Mr. Brown, I really do. I was trying to talk up to the legal level, the 7 of us, to not put the district or the board in a legal position concern, because agreed, everyone has a different position. I think most people, even if we made it optional, would still be responsible and wear them. That wasn't my concern. I understand your concern about the teachers in particular and the staff, but I want to make sure the 7 of us, when we decide this, we're not putting the district in a lawsuit situation because of these infringements.
But remember, this has been in place since August.
And Mr.
So,
Hilliard, I'm trying to follow you when Dr. Micah has expressed that our attorney has said we are not breaking any laws, we're not violating any laws. And so I trust our attorney, Mr. Lopez, to give us the correct advice. I'm struggling.
I do have a question to you, Mrs. Binkley. Did you receive that information until just right now? Because I did not receive the information initially, and normally I would think all 7 of us would get the same legal advice in a group setting so that we all have the same so we can share it with the community. That was my point, to make sure that everybody's on the same sheet so that hopefully our parents, no one goes, oh yes, we are on good legal standing. That's all I'm trying to get to make sure that
Mr. Hilliard, I did ask Dr. Micah about the lawsuit, yes, because I had a meeting with Dr. Micah by myself. When we have a question, we ask, we call, and I asked Dr. Micah, and he did inform me that, yes, we are not violating any rights. So, I can't speak to the rest of our board, but I do know this. We do have trust in our attorney.
I understand that. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that I had it heard and clear.
And I'd like to echo what Ms. Winkley has said. I've been feeling the same way for months. We have an attorney, Mr. Lopez, who has given us some great advice. I also appreciate and like to echo my colleague, David. I was going to call you Dr. Byer. David.
Definitely not that.
David Byer has said as well. I appreciate, your concern and the research, that you've done, and your concern about the law. But please know that we're concerned about the law too.
I have no doubt. I had not heard it.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. That's
why,
great
that's
deliberation.
why we have experts who, in the law, who, I'm not sure if you have a law degree or anything.
I absolutely do not. That's
But-
why I was asking the questions. I just wanted to get clarity because I had not received it, and I want to make sure we, as a board, are in a good position legally.
Well,
and
the
respecting
rest
rights.
of us are good. Again, and Dr. Micah has expressed it well, that our attorney, Mr. Lopez, makes sure, because that's the last thing he wants as well, that
I
we
agree.
are in, any legal jeopardy. But, and as Mr. Byer has said, we have handbooks that look at, what was I going to say, dress codes. Dress codes as well. If the kid isn't dressed according to the dress code, then the progressive discipline happens. So.
I understand, and I understand Mr. Byers' point out purple hair, but these are restrictive breathing devices. They're medical devices. That's the concern I was trying to express. So I do appreciate everybody's input. Unless Mr. Leos likes anything, that's all I was asking about. Thank you.
I when you spoke at the beginning, right now a little bit, you talked about when are we moving from a pandemic to an endemic. And I think I just saw a really good short documentary on smallpox. And smallpox was eradicated because it was a global cooperation from everybody globally. And that's what we're hoping is going to happen with COVID-19, is that we're going to come together globally and as humans help each other out. And I think that the wearing of a mask, which is temporary, we're doing our part globally as Northeast ISD to help to move from the pandemic to the endemic. And we all hate them. I mean, I particularly am we're not fans of them at all. But if we do this small task, this small thing to help us get from pandemic to endemic, then yes, I think that they're important.
Great, thank you for sharing.
And if I can also add, I'd like to, thank the staff and thank Dr. Micah, because I feel that these 9 items here are small steps, but good steps to, working towards some sense of, normalcy. But we have to take it one little step at a time. It was great to see the kids here. We didn't have that months ago, but it's little steps at it. I feel that it's, little steps at a time that's going to get us eventually, where we need to be. So thank you for that.
I do have, I guess, a comment and then a question or clarification. And the comment is, I think, back to a couple of these items that have to do with the removing masks outside, removing masks for outdoor PE, social distancing needs to be maintained. I think to Mr. Hilliard's one, I think it was your comment about making sure that we're consistent with that across the board, and that we are giving our teachers and administrators and staff the support they need to make sure that that's consistent. Because I think that, as I mentioned last week, you can get into a situation where you create a policy and then it gets you go a while, and depending on what campus you go, you might see it a little bit differently. And so I think we need to refresh ourselves and finish out the year strong and make sure that happens. So anyway, that's a comment. And I'll have a question. Do you have something you want to
Well,
respond
and Mr. Byer, you're hitting on a very real thing. Some of this is there are still people, look, y'all, and you guys all know that part of what I do and what I've charged my staff with is visiting schools. Look, there are campuses where you walk in, there are still people behind shower curtains. They are that scared of the virus. That's real. I can't just change that perception from it overnight. But what we're going to do is make sure that we're, one, talking to principals, and two, making certain that that communication flows downward to that teacher in a manner that says, look, this is they can take it off at recess. You need to actively monitor out there. But you know, and it's going to be like anything new. It's going to take some time in which to put it in place and make sure it works well. But there will be, I'm sure there's going to be some challenges with some of this. I'm not naive enough to believe that on Wednesday after we speak that this will just roll out perfectly. It never does. No change does. Which is why I just ask for the community first to reach out to the principal if it's a teacher issue. Talk to them. We have great principals in this district that do right by kids and teachers every day, give them a shot at resolving it. If not, then bring it up to Mr. Jimenez and myself, and then we're going to take a look into it. But these are all going to be somewhat of a challenge through this as we go, because everybody has a different comfort level in this. And that's what we've discovered is that. And so it's small incremental steps as we move through it. That's going to be important. It's just as we began, if you guys all think back to August when we began this, we took a phased-in approach. And what we did, in fact, Miss Kelly and I were talking about it, is how much we learned when we first brought employees, students back, and how that allowed us to really change some protocols. And then we started bringing phase one. We learned a little more, and we continued to change it to the point by the time October rolled around, we were ready to open it up because we had worked through all those issues. There's going to be some things in here I can tell that are going to be a challenge. Mr. Jimenez and I have talked about this at great length. He's ready to start to handle it should you all approve it. But yeah, I mean, it's going to take some work on our part. We know it.
One other item that came up last week that I just want to get clarification on is the 10-day versus 14-day quarantine. It looks like we're maintaining the 14-day. Is that correct? And I know TA gives, they give you the option. They don't say it has to be this, or it has to be that. They give you options. So I just want to follow up and make sure that the information we have in this district is that is what's beneficial to this district.
So CDC did create two options for reducing quarantine in different circumstances. The gold standard does remain the 14-day quarantine. The San Antonio Metropolitan Health District continues to use the 14-day quarantine for anyone who's been in close contact. We do get guidance from those organizations. Given that we are making some small incremental changes in terms of mask use and different activities, coupled with just changes in the community and what we may expect to see in the coming weeks and months in terms of COVID-19 cases and numbers in the community, the recommendation is to continue with the 14-day quarantine for someone who's been in close contact with someone who's tested positive for COVID-19.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that was still we were not looking at changing that at
Yeah,
this point.
no, and Mr. Mr. Byer, that's something that I can change in the future, minus, I don't believe that's in our safety plan as far as quarantining goes. Ms. Chancellor, does it specifically state 14-day? It does. Okay, so then we would have to bring it back to you all for a vote. But at this time, I mean, I know Nurse Kelly and I spoke about it with Dr. Reddick. They still feel that 14 days is what's best in those cases.
Okay. Thank you. And I think the last thing I have, sorry, I said I only had two, but I do have one more. To clarify nobody likes to talk about it, and everybody thinks that we're doing this because of money, but what is the financial implication, or I'm sorry, clarify for me the move from in-person to virtual, or is it in-person to completely unenrolled?
Yeah, so Dan, are you back there? So Mr. Byer's asking, and I want to make sure, so he's asking about the 52.2%. Just so you know, as of today, it's you heard Ms. Gutierrez talk about it. We've actually gone up 1% since last week. So we continue to bring more and more kids back in. What is the exact rule with the 52.2? Is it it's from in, those have to be 52.2% of our students are in person, correct?
Yes, sir. 52 point, and that's going to be the floor that we're going to be using when we calculate the last 6 weeks of funding.
Okay, so it's just from in-person to virtual is what that?
No, sir. The 52 is the in-person, right?
Correct.
What was that snapshot back in October? And it's going to be the in-person, whatever the in-person is at the end of the 6 weeks.
Okay, that's what I just want to clarify. I wanted to.
So it's moving from in-person back to virtual.
Correct. I guess that's what I was trying to clarify.
Right. And again, remember, every district has a different number.
Right.
Because the districts that chose to come back faster end up with a higher number than those that drug it on longer.
Yeah. Okay. Because I don't want to give them any publicity, but there's a small group that it's disappointing to me that there's people outside of this district that are actively proposing and advocating for us to lose students, so we would lose that money. And I think that is disgusting is the word I got to use on that.
You know, Mr. Byer, that's interesting you bring it up because Ms. Chancellor and I spoke about this. Now his name has drawn a blank. Virgil T. Blossom, right? He was our superintendent in the school district. He actually wrote a book, and I'm trying to remember its title. Ms. Chancellor, maybe you'll remember it because we looked it up. But for those of you that don't know about Virgil T. Blossom, he actually desegregated the Arkansas schools. And what was fascinating about his book is what he talks about is the challenges actually weren't within his community. The challenges were people coming in from the outside interfering with his community that caused the problem. And so, you know, that's what we've seen as we monitor things, is oftentimes we see people from the outside of our community, come in and look. Everybody has a strong opinion right now of this. I get it. Again, I live with 2 teenagers. They give me those opinions all the time. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting how that, and I think social media and the internet has really allowed for that to happen even more often than it used to. So if you ever get a chance, I'll find that book and you can read it. It's pretty fascinating to read one of our own.
We had a talk about Virgil Blossom a few years ago. The book was, It's Happened, or Happened Here. It happened here. Right. But he was at Little Rock. It was during the
absolutely.
Brown v. Ward.
It's an interesting book.
He was a leader in that. I had a couple of thoughts on, first of all, I really appreciate the incredible work that the staff has done to like Terry said, to bring us back to some normalcy. I think it's really important to go back and remember that, like I said last week, we can't let this be our own personal opinion, that we've got to go forward on data. And in our case, I think we really got blessed with the parents that we heard from. even the people who were against masks, I'm so appreciative of the fact that they recognize the incredible work that the district has done and that the teachers have done to keep our children safe. And I really appreciated hearing almost every email was very respectful and very thoughtful, and that was really great. I think it's so important to listen to our parent voice. That's got to be a priority, and like David said, the great majority of the emails are in favor of keeping the system, the program, the protocols that we have in place right now. It was also interesting to see that so many of the emails were from parents who were also medical people. And that held a lot of weight for me because they've got that dual role. I believe in all of the emails, there was only one medical doctor who was against masks. And every other medical person that we heard from, doctors, epidemiologists, in fact, we heard from a major in the military whose specialty was and that data there was so impactful. These are people, a pulmonologist, a cardiologist, people who've actually been dealing with this, a pediatric specialist who's dealt with the side effects that the children are suffering from. There was one person, I don't believe he was a doctor, but his comparison to the way that HIV, if we remember, if you're aware of how HIV, when it was first, it was a crossover, also a crossover virus from an animal to human, as COVID has been. And that the way that we treated early HIV patients before we knew what we were doing is heartbreaking when we think back on it. And so how can we know at this point how many children or teachers or community members that we may have protected by our protocols? We will never know how many people did not get COVID because of what we're doing. And as someone, I'm from a family that I dearly love, that a great majority of them do not believe that COVID exists, or they did not believe it until they got it. And they also did not believe in wearing masks. We were very, we did lose a very precious family member, someone active, healthy, and an RN. And she was gone within 4 or 5 days. That kind of was a little bit of wake-up call. And it's very real. I'm very lucky that my great number of my family members did get it, but did survive, some with some struggles, but we're making it through it. So if there is anything that we can do to protect our children, not knowing what's coming down this COVID road, and we're seeing these numbers creeping up in the northern states of children now becoming more COVID positive, I'm sorry, but that scares me. I don't like that. So I'm ready for us to go back to a normal classroom. I want to see smiles too. I do agree with the speaker that said you can, or the nurse who wrote us that you can see smiles in their over their masks. But I'm really impressed and proud that this district has stayed the course to keep everyone safe, our students and our teachers, and I greatly appreciate it.
Okay. So I have a motion and a second to approve the amendments to the COVID-19 protocols and safety plan as presented on April 5th, 2021, as listed above. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
The motion carries. Item B, facility naming. 1, possible action regarding the naming of Churchill High School academic building for Joe reasons. Dr. Micah.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Bloomer, if you would please come up to the podium. I would like the principal of Churchill High School, Todd Bloomer, to address this item.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staffs and guests. My name is Todd Blimmer, and I'm the proud principal of Churchill High School. Thank you for the honor tonight to spend a few moments talking about something that our campus is really excited about. About 18 months ago, we opened up our newest building at Churchill High School. This beautiful building houses many of our science and CTE courses. Tonight, we'd like to propose that we name this building after a former Churchill principal and longtime NEISD employee. Mr. Joseph Reasons retired after 50 years of service as a teacher, a coach, an administrator, and an executive director. He served 34 years of those in the Northeast Independent School District. As principal of Churchill High School, Mr. Reasons left a legacy of excellence in our community that still prevails today. After serving Churchill High School, Mr. Reasons moved to central office, where he continued to influence and mentor administrators throughout our district. Mr. Reasons is well respected by everyone that has worked with him, and he has represented the Northeast Independent School District with pride and honor his entire career. It is all of these reasons that our Campus Improvement Committee at Churchill High School voted unanimously to name our newest building the Joe Reasons Academic Building. I hope that you will consider our proposal. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Bloomer. Ms. Winkley, looks
I'm
like you're...
so excited. I'm so excited for Mr. Reasons and for the Churchill community. Great, 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 great honor.
Anybody else have any comments?
I just want to say, in addition to what the incredible, and Mr. Bloomer may not appreciate it, but, Mr. Reasons is Winston Churchill personified. I mean, come on. You're never going to get the look that Mr. Reasons has when it comes to being his twin. But in addition,
Nor do you want it.
Yeah, I was going to say, really? In addition, there's things that he's done that maybe some people aren't aware of, and that's things supporting the community, like the foundation. He has been an incredible donor to the foundation with his beautiful handmade fountain pens, always drawing, and I was lucky enough to get one time, so yay. For our foundation auction. So he gives back in other ways besides just what we've seen in the Churchill community. So this is a great idea.
Yeah. Okay, so do I have a motion to name the academic building at Churchill High School for Joe Reasons?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Winkley. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Huey. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr.
Hey,
Bloomer.
thank you.
Yay is right.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a good night.
Funny mask you have there.
Item C, resolutions. A, possible action regarding National School Nurse Day. Mr. Villarreal.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Mike, executive staff, and guests, I call on Maria Perez, our Director of Health Services, to the podium to discuss this. And I just want to publicly commend Health Services for all the work they've done this last year and continue to do. We had some employee vaccinations at Piper Bass on Thursday from 4 to 8 and on Saturday from 9 to 5 for employees who wish to still get vaccinated. And, these ladies put in a lot of work and a lot of hard work. And the school nurses also, it's amazing what they've done to try to keep things going at our schools. And I really just wanted to say that we really appreciate their work. So with that, I turn it over to Ms. Perez.
Thank you.
Thank you. And there is no way that I could do this without my team, Emma, Assistant Director for Health Services, and Delynn Haycraft, the nurse coordinator for the district. That's my COVID team. As I continue the health services part of the department. Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. Since 1972, National School Nurse Day has been set aside to recognize school nurses. It was established to foster a better understanding of the role of school nurses in the education setting. I hope most of you were able to view the superintendent's message last week. Dr. Micah did an excellent job at praising our nurses during his weekly message. Thank you, appreciate it. This year, building on the increased visibility of nurses' contributions, National Nurses Week has been expanded to Nurses Month in May. We are here to ask for recognition for May 12th as School Nurse Day. And there's a video that was produced by Jason and his team, if you want to go ahead and get that started. Thank you.
The incredible thing about nurses is you can drop them into any uncharted waters and usually their response is going to be to put their head down and do the work.
Our nurses were like literally just on standby.
From March until December.
The nurses worked pretty long hours. I was bringing my laptop home.
Every night.
They could start as early as 7 in the morning.
Every weekend, every holiday.
And some of them continued on till 6 and 7. My work home, I was making phone calls, I was doing contact tracing.
Ready and willing to do whatever was asked of them.
One thing I've learned from COVID is you don't know anything about COVID and what's going to happen. They were ready, willing, and able.
We are not invincible, and so many of our nurses were going through tragic and horrible personal things in their life, yet had to kind of leave that at home so that they could come and devote all of their time and attention while they were at work. A year later, it's exhausting. We're tired, as I'm sure you've heard, so many of the healthcare workers right now are just absolutely exhausted.
I have a family that I've been very, very close with for the past 4 years. And he has a chronic medical condition that he would visit every day. And he would stay and eat lunch with us. And this year he's gone virtual. But both his parents got COVID. And his mother passed away from COVID. And him and his brother are graduating this year. And that probably has something that's going to stay with me for the rest of my life. And, you know, it's those kinds of moments of just offering what you can and being there. But I'm glad that I've met them and their family and everything that they've gone through. It's truly unimaginable to hear that, to get that message that his mother passed away and that they all went through this and they're still going through it.
It's heightened because of the number of people impacted, but this is what nurses do on a daily basis all the time.
Because when COVID appeared, everything else didn't disappear. We still have asthma, we still have diabetes, we still have students that we have to medicate, we have to give them treatments. There's emergencies, whether they're minor or major, that the nurses have to deal with.
I could not be more proud of our nurses and our clinic staff. They have shown up every day, pulled, their weight and the weight of so many others on their shoulders to just continue to push through, do what needs to be done to keep, some sense of normalcy for our students.
We actually have some of the best nurses that work all over the city. They're here in our district.
We're not going to quit. We're not going to give up. We're going to keep doing what needs to be done, and we're going to continue to support this community.
They don't need a lot of encouragement or a lot of pushing in the right direction. You give them the information and turn them loose, and they will get it done every time.
I would be lying if I didn't say that each one of our nurses has been absolutely incredible.
I saw that tiny glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel, and I think that's that light. I think it's that light. Let's focus on that. So that's my hope. And it's getting brighter. As the last couple of weeks have gone on, it's gotten brighter. I don't know whose idea this was, but let them know that as a nurse, as one of those educators, one of those people that we aren't part of the educational system or seen often as not part of the educational system. Whoever did this, I want to say thank you, because I feel like our voices are being heard, and for some of us it may be the first time. And as a school nurse, I'm not just a nurse. I am the medical professional that so many people go to and rely on. And so I'm proud to be a school nurse. We're specialized in our field, and I am so happy that the people at the top are recognizing it. So I want to say thank you for whoever made the decision to do this, because it's like it's like a virtual hug.
Thank you. Michelle Dalpett, the nurse at Churchill, she is just ending year 30 in education. And we are so lucky to have had her, and she is getting ready to retire this year, but it is well deserved, 30 years. Every year, our first day back, we get together and we take a picture. If you ever come by my office, which we share with the PD, go down the hall and you'll see all the pictures. This year we couldn't, but I was not going to not do a poster this year. And this was the best way. Each nurse contributed a Bitmoji of themselves. And what was nice about this one is that for the first time we could put their names and their campus assignment on there. And Dr. Micah, I have one because I heard there's a special place in your office.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Thank you for your personal story. Appreciate it.
That was a great video.
I'd just like to say I wish we could make it Nurses Year. Particularly our nurses, they have been amazing and stunning. And one thing I didn't mention earlier is some of the emails that we did receive were from our school nurses. So I hope you know, I hope you heard that the great majority of your community respects you. I really appreciated what our Churchill nurse said about she appreciates the respect from as a professional. So there's no way to thank our school nurses for what they've done this past year.
Do I have a motion to approve the resolution recognizing Wednesday, May 12th, 2021 as National School Nurses Day?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Leos. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Thank you again. Thank y'all for what you do every day for our kiddos. Item 2, possible action regarding School Library Month. Mr. Villarreal.
Yes, Madam President. I call on Terry Sanchez, our Director of Library Services, to present this resolution.
Good evening, Madam President Grona, members of the Board of Trustees, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. Pillars are known for the beauty and strength they serve to support the heavy load of a building. NEISD librarians are like the pillars of the school as they serve to support their entire campus. Pictured on the next few slides, you'll see the librarians that have been recognized for the strength and beauty of their programs and their contributions. Melissa Figueroa, teacher librarian at Encino Park Elementary, and Tracy Shingler, teacher librarian at Wilshire Elementary School, were selected as their Teachers of the Year for their campuses. Sarah Flores, El Dorado Elementary School librarian, and Haley Schmidt at Johnson High School serves as their teacher librarian, was selected as their campus Trinity Prize campus nominee. These two ladies, that's Jenny Pantuso on the left, I apologize, from Fox Run Elementary School, and Christina Reyna from Nimitz Middle School. They also were selected as their 2021 Trinity Prize campus nominees. Dawn Fontana, amazing teacher librarian at Regency Place Elementary School, was nominated for the Texas PTA Elementary Teacher of the Year. And our librarians are often seen or noticed for their innovative programs. The following two slides will feature a few of our librarians that were awarded NEAF grants. Angie Oliverson, teacher librarian at Harmony Hills Elementary School, and Lori Darzlek, teacher librarian at Hardy Oak Elementary School. Angie was awarded $3,000 for additional makerspace materials, and Lori Darzlek was awarded a $5,100 grant for a large print collection for her library. Janeth Renshaw serves the Pre-K Academy as their teacher librarian, and she was awarded a $3,000 grant for a sensory paths. And Jennifer Harrington will receive a new vending machine for books at her library at Castle Hills Elementary, where she serves as their teacher librarian. So librarians are often known for their nurturing ways. They serve as counselors at the hub of their school for teachers and students. You'll see at the Pruitt Library, a partnership with NEISD at the Roosevelt Library, a very nurturing program led by branch manager Rachel Downen. She was awarded a $20,000 grant from the Rackspace Foundation for their family and teen chess program. It's very popular and very well attended. And finally, April Gastinger, who is librarian at Eisenhower Middle School, was recently honored as a summa cum laude teacher honoree by one of her former students, and she serves, like I said, Eisenhower Middle School as their teacher librarian. NEISD librarians contribute to the quality of instruction and create lessons to ignite students' curiosity so they will leave and be lifelong learners. Librarians strive to provide students with the tools they'll need to be contributing citizens. NEISD librarians are teachers first. As you saw above, they've been recognized for their innovation. You'll see many highlighted in the NEISD media almost on a weekly basis for their innovative programming and for their accessibility even through the pandemic. NEISD librarians are often admired for their nurturing ways. The video you'll see next was created with the assistance of Ryan Phillips, audio-video production courses teacher at the Legacy of Educational Excellence High School. We owe a huge thank you to Ryan for his creativity and mostly for his patience as he worked with us to create a video that clearly displays the positive impact of our librarians and how they exemplify the attributes of the 4 pillars of NEISD. Our librarians love to teach. They are nurturing, innovative, and accessible. Thank you for your time and attention today. We hope you'll enjoy the video.
Being a teaching librarian allows me to work with teachers from all different content areas, so I'm not necessarily tied to one curriculum, and I get to focus on helping kids think about how they learn regardless of the curriculum. One of the most meaningful things for me as an educator is when I'm working with students to identify problems in their own community and feel empowered to use library resources such as databases to solve these problems or to investigate these problems. And as a librarian, it's a thrill to get to be able to be part of that process. I remember working with one student in particular, and he had something on his heart, something that was really personally significant to him, and I could tell that he was lacked confidence or was unsure if it was something that he should research. And when he and I started to talk, and I encouraged him to definitely research and find out the solution to the problem that he identified, I could just see in him a kind of like a spark, a light that I validated for him the thing that he had identified, and that it gave him power. It was something that he could search for, that he could solve, and it was so exciting for me to see him feel like he had power and he had agency by using things in the library.
I hope you get to see the harvest moon this year. It's usually gorgeous, and you would know when you see it because it's big and golden, like you. Yes, you're golden.
I feel like reading is so important, and if you can get a child to read, they can do anything. If you can read, you can do anything. You can teach yourself anything.
Miss Pepper, she leads by serving others. The library is such an important part, and it's very active, it's very busy, and having this nurturing type of librarian that just feels so comfortable that, we have to ask them, all right, it's time to get back to class, So but that's just the kind of person that we have that is in our library and just what she does.
Well, I believe everyone became Zoom experts when COVID closed schools and students went virtual. And so we had to quickly adjust and how to video conference. So that's been one advantage of having virtual students and having technology and learning those new apps. This year, we've also learned how to design lessons for virtual students for easy access to activities and to ebooks, and to put them on a slide or onto a website where all the students have to do, virtual students have to do, is click on a link and they can read that book. So all of that has increased and helped students, virtual students, read and improve their vocabulary and their literacy skills, their comprehension skills. And then I also have a planning partner, Lisa Barnes from Vineyard Ranch, who's the librarian there. She is wonderful, and we collaborate weekly together on our lessons, what we're doing, ideas for the library, lessons for all the grade levels, making sure we're hitting important TEKs in our lessons, different ways to modify things, edit things, because when you create a lesson, you have to think about not only the in-person students, you have to think about the virtual students and making sure that everyone is getting what they need. A kinder teacher and I partnered together to write a NEEF grant to get STEAM materials for really the primary grades at our campus. And so we were fortunate enough to receive a $9,000 grant, and we used it to buy materials for the library and to help the primary grades in not only STEAM but literacy development.
So when COVID-19 hit and there was the shutdown, I opened up Zoom office hours every day. So students who could come and just talk, have a conversation. If you needed help with homework, then I was there for that Zoom office time, and that was usually an hour, and kids can come and go as they wanted to. Immediately, I set up that Bitmoji scene so that students can feel like they were at least going into the library and getting some type of a visual. Okay, we can check out books here, or we can have access to the digital resources, and they can just click through until they can get what they needed. One of the best parts of being a librarian is the collaboration piece. I mean, you could collaborate with anyone. Well, my bilingual book collection is what I want to target and grow this year. And it just pleases me to be able, for them to come in and to be able to pick out a bilingual book, and it might be a fairy tale, but it's in 2 languages, so that those students can have the access that they need in order to grow as students and to be able to, put a whole nother language under their belt. It's a part of my goal to be able to open up the library and to have that there's access for anyone who's reading from any background, and they can find a good, safe place here.
Librarians are proactive. They're always preparing for the next lesson, reading promotion, or event.
Como bibliotecarios, todo lo que hacemos es para nuestros estudiantes. Cada lección, cada experiencia, todo es por el amor de nuestros estudiantes.
School Library Month 2021 proclamation.
April 2021 has been designated the
Middle School Library Month.
and
School libraries provide materials for teachers and students that will encourage growth and knowledge. And school libraries provide materials that will
Develop literacy
cultural aesthetic appreciation
and ethical standards.
and
School libraries provide materials which reflect the ideas and beliefs of
religious, social, political, historical, and ethnic groups,
And their contributions to the American and world heritage and culture.
and school libraries provide books to encourage children to read for pleasure. And school libraries provide materials to meet individual needs, varied interests, abilities, social economic backgrounds, and maturity levels of the students served.
And school libraries are a fun place for students to go, and all students deserve a well-managed library to provide for free expression and access to ideas. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Northeast Independent School District Board of the Trustees and the Superintendent
Declare the month of April 2021 as School Library Month, and thereby urge each of the district schools to adopt a similar resolution.
We love our school library!
Thank you.
Very cute. That was
Thank
very
you.
cute. Thank you.
the best reading of a resolution.
Yeah.
Ever.
I know. Have kids do it from now on. Yeah. Do I have a motion to proclaim April 2021 as School Library Month and call upon school administrators, teachers, and students to recognize and support this action and to participate throughout this month-long celebration?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. Do I have a second?
And I second.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. Thank you again, Terry.
Thank you so much.
Item 3, possible action regarding federal elementary and secondary school emergency relief ESSER funds resolution. That's you and me.
Madam President, do you not have a video?
Gosh.
This one would not be pleasant.
Jason, why didn't we do a video? Go ahead.
So if everyone will remember, there are 3 federal stimulus packages that have now been passed. And as you all will recall, the first, that was the CARES Act, allocated $1.3 billion to the state of Texas, which the state then used to supplant our funds in education. So we saw no new monies, but everybody understood at that point what was going on. Since then, 2 more bills have passed, totaling about approximately $18 billion, to which none of those monies now has flowed to the school districts to start to use. I do want you to know that, I believe it's only Texas and New York that have yet to flow money from ESSER 2 to school districts. So we're still waiting on that. So what this resolution really is, should you all adopt it, is a resolution really to be sent up to Greg Abbott, encouraging him to go ahead and release these funds to school districts as soon as possible so that we can implement it.
Okay.
Madam President,
Do
anything
we
to
have
add?
any questions or comments about this resolution?
I just wanted to say, if anyone is interested, I'm working with a group to go to Austin in the next couple of weeks. If you're interested in going to visit our legislators to let them know our feelings on this issue and others, let me know.
Okay, thanks. So do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Winkley. Do I have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Mr. Leos. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item D, Instruction and Campus Administration. 1, possible action regarding approval of proclamation related to pre-kindergarten instructional materials adoption. Mr. Jarrett.
President Grona, Dr. Micah, members of the board, executive staff, at this time I would like to ask Dr. Munoz to come forward to address this next agenda item.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests.
Tonight, we present the proposed 2021 pre-K instructional materials adoption as selected by members of the Northeast Independent School District. The selections presented align to criteria and skill domains as determined by the Texas Education Agency. These include social and emotional development, language and communication, emergent literacy reading, emergent literacy writing, mathematics, science, social studies, fine arts, physical development, and technology. As per TEA, the Texas Pre-Kindergarten Guidelines are based on current knowledge of theory and scientific research about how children develop and how they learn, with a greater emphasis placed on young children's conceptual learning, acquisition of basic skills, and participation in meaningful, relevant learning experiences. Our Assistant Director for Early Childhood Education, Mrs. April Musquiz, and I collaborated and created a system that would allow for all pre-kindergarten teachers and staff to have the utmost information regarding all publications, especially during a remarkably trying spring semester. Regardless of the circumstances, our goal was to ensure that all measures taken revolved around adopting a resource that would support student success. Mrs. Musquiz will present the process from initiation to culmination, along with the publication that received the majority of the vote for the 2021 school year. In addition to this presentation, we've also provided each member of our board a booklet that outlines all components of our streamlined process. Mrs. Musquiz?
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and distinguished guests. Tonight, we are pleased to present the Northeast Independent School District Proclamation 2021 recommendation for the adoption of pre-kindergarten instructional materials. I would like to open with a quote that frames the essence of a high-quality pre-kindergarten program. The important thing is not so much that every child should be taught, as that every child should be given the wish to learn. Our task is to ignite a love for learning that lasts a lifetime. Recognition must be given to each and every early childhood educator who dedicated hours of their time, carefully evaluating each of the instructional materials, selecting the one they determined to best serve the needs of Northeast ISD students. The process for recommendation was conducted in 5 phases, starting with Phase 1 in November 2020 and extending through January 2021. During this time, the State Board of Education adoption list was narrowed to 5 publishers' materials to review. An evaluation rubric was created in alignment with the Texas Pre-Kindergarten Guidelines, as well as the vision and mission of the Early Childhood Program. The Campus Representative Committee was established, and the publishers were notified of the opening of the pre-kindergarten instructional materials window. The committee included pre-kindergarten teachers and early childhood instructional support staff from all 34 pre-K sites, the 2 Ready, Set, Go only sites, specialist representation from the Special Education Department and the Digital Learning Department. It was essential that the committee members had experience in application of and depth of knowledge in the Texas Pre-Kindergarten Guidelines in order to thoroughly evaluate the instructional materials. From the 13 publishers listed on the instructional materials list adopted by the State Board of Education, the 5 selected for district review were Benchmark Education, Savas, Kaplan, Scholastic, and Teaching Strategies based on these 8 criteria. The evaluation rubric was a critical component of the review process, as its completion was required in order to receive a link to vote. The complete rubric can be found in Appendix C of the Proclamation 2021 booklet. The rubric consisted of 6 categories, which were: creates a deep understanding of content and skills, supports a student-centered approach to learning, incorporates aligned, authentic assessment, provides appropriate support for teachers, employs technology to enhance teaching and learning, and provides appropriate and quality materials. Phase 2 was conducted in January and February 2021. During this phase, the initial committee meeting was held and a virtual publishers hearing took place. Material evaluations were finalized, digital learning tools were examined, and the rubrics were submitted. 60 representatives attended the initial meeting, and the presentation is available for full review in Appendix B of the proclamation booklet. On February 11th, a virtual publishers hearing was held. We have the recording available. We're going to go ahead and play one of the clips which describes the process.
Current presentation. So the first one will start at about 4:30 and run to 4:50. Each one's 20 minutes with a buffer of about 5 minutes in between each one. So there is no order to the publishers this evening. We literally drew from a hat. So we'll have teaching strategies present first, then followed by benchmark education, followed by scholastic, followed by Savas, and then followed by Kaplan.
My name is.
Phase 3 began with the opening of the voting window on March 1st. The voting results were analyzed, a meeting with publishers was held to review packages and quotes, and the instructional materials recommendation was finalized. A total of 71 teachers and instructional support staff submitted a vote. The voting results are displayed by the percentage of votes each one received. The full breakdown of the votes is available on page 15 of the proclamation booklet. Savas, 3 cheers for pre-K, 1, 2, 3 pre-kinder, received the majority vote. The acceptance of votes was extended to March 15th in order to accommodate for the impact of inclement weather during the review window and spring break as well. Phase 4 brings us to our current stage in this process. Today, we bring our recommendation for the upcoming instructional material adoption. If approved, final quotes based on classroom allocations will be used to order and purchase all resources. Plans will begin for offering professional learning opportunities before the end of the school year. The proposed package recommended for approval includes the comprehensive package for each classroom teacher and an 8-year license for Ready Rosie, which is a parent engagement tool presently being purchased separately from our current adoption on an annual basis. Phase 5 discusses our future plans for the successful implementation of the newly adopted materials. This phase will include alignment with our pre-kindergarten scope and sequence of learning progressions of the Texas Pre-Kindergarten Guidelines and curriculum writing. Professional development for all those involved in instruction delivery will be ongoing throughout the 2021 school year. This presentation provided a brief overview of the instructional materials review process. Additional documentation is available within the Proclamation 2021 booklet. Thank you for the opportunity to present before you our recommendation for approval, and our committee is available for any additional questions you may have.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions regarding this?
I did.
Okay.
I needed some clarification on Kaplan. It talked about the only materials received and reviewed from Kaplan included the digital. That y'all made several attempts to get the review kits, but they never delivered. But they were still in your 5 that were, which, by the way, the whole procedure that y'all did on this is just phenomenal. It's so great and so well thought out and well planned. So thank you for that. But why was Kaplan still included if you didn't have what you were expecting?
The inclusion of Kaplan was from the onstart of the proclamation process. Once those 5 publishers were notified that they were being included for review, they had the opportunity to send the materials to the 34 campuses. After multiple attempts, unfortunately, Kaplan did not deliver on the materials. They did send digital resources that were available for review, but the teachers did not physically have them in their hands at that point. In order to continue with the 5 that we had continued, we left them on there and gave them the opportunity to present during the publishers' hearing.
I did see they got no votes, so that made sense, but I was just curious as to why they were still presenting. My only real discomfort with this is that Savas apparently is the new name for Pearson, and Pearson does not have a great reputation in the education community. So, what's going on there? Anybody know?
You mean testing?
Yes. Trying not to say the bad word there.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
kind
I
of hate
don't.
to be giving them money after some of the things that have happened.
Yeah, you know, I think I summed it up best to Ms. Chancellor, with that hiccup that the state had. I said, I want to be careful we don't throw too many stones, because if you think back to our first day of virtual, it wasn't great either. Many districts had hiccups. So we'll see what the second one looks like. Yes, they had a lot of time to get ready, but I will tell you, and we've learned it, and Mr. Villarreal, you can speak to it. When it comes to the virtual space, everything looks great on paper until you hit the button. And then you just don't know what's going to happen.
I think I'm thinking, though, not only just of current day, but in the past, there have been issues
Yes,
with contracts and with Pearson and things like
Ms.
that.
Huey, that's not uncommon in the publishing world. There's many publishers that don't meet the criteria that's set forth by the rubrics that the state set as well as the district. And so when they go through this process, what they're looking for is the one that hits the highest mark of meeting the rubric. And in this particular adoption, Pearson was the best product for us to consider going forward. And that's why we have so many people involved, just to make sure that we're not missing something and we choose a product that covers all the standards that the state set forth.
Who put together that rubric again? Because it was incredible. That was intense. That was great.
That rubric was a collaboration, actually, with Houston ISD. Mm-hmm.
That was a tremendous job on that. Very encompassing, so thank you.
Yes, Madam President. The $679,000 quote, is that just for a 1 year and then we renew that? Or, because I saw the 8 year, I'm just trying to figure out, is this the 8 year cross for all of those classes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the 2021 proclamation instructional materials purchases as presented by the 2021 District Level Instructional Materials Committee, and certify that all students will be provided with instructional materials that cover 100% of the Texas essential knowledge and skills?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Winkley. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Great presentation and great information. Item 2, possible action regarding state waiver for on-campus related CEHI home-based instruction for pregnancy services. Mr. Jimenez.
President Grona, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests, I'd like to invite Mr. Tyler Shoesmith, Senior Director for Student Leadership and Wellbeing, to the podium to address this agenda item.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. Tonight I bring you a 3-year waiver for pregnancy-related services. CEHI is what we call it, which is compensatory education home instruction, which allows us to provide smaller class sizes for our school-age parenting students that either have prenatal issues prior to giving birth or they have postpartum instruction with us up to 6 weeks. That allows them to come to our facility in a regular year and being provided that 1-to-4 ratio classroom size and also case management. This removes them from the typical instructional environment, which like a regular campus would have. This allows them to be with us for a period of 4 hours and they get a full week's worth of attendance. Mm-hmm. If they're a special education student, they get an additional 2 hours on top of that, 2 hours from our general ed side and then 4 hours from the special education side. And this waiver allows us to do that. And this will begin next year.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about this?
So I did want to ask real quick. So without the waiver, this has to be done at home. Is that what I understand?
Without the waiver, we wouldn't be able to provide the ratio. Yes, sir. They would be at home campus or they would have to go on homebound services likely.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Do I have a motion to recommend the approval of the application for the general waiver for pregnancy-related services on campus? How did you say it? CEHI?
CEHI. Yes, ma'am.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Leos. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Shoesmith. Item E, Business Services. 1, possible action regarding TEA security environment authorization. Mr. Villarreal. Oh, that
Yes, Madam
worked.
President.
Just bang it on your head. That worked.
Yeah, we bring tonight to you tonight to authorize Tanya Laboreau. She's taking over for Brenda Padalecki, and in the past we just had to bring it once for authorization for her to be able to submit PEMS and other type of data. But this is going to be a yearly requirement that the state is saying that we need to have her authorized every year. So, but this is just standard operating procedure to bring to the board.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Do I have a motion to authorize Tanya Lobero? How'd you say that?
Lobero? Yes, ma'am.
NEISD Senior PEMS Manager to act as the superintendent designee for approving staff requests, also referred to as submitting requests to TEA, for access to one or more TEA web applications accessed through the TEA-SE. This authorization is valid for the period starting April 13, 2021 to January 31, 2022.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item F, consent. 1, business services. A, extension of depository contract. B, budget amendment number 3. C, 50,000 purchases. D, bid items. 2, operations. A, 2016 hail damage program year 3 bid package 1A, Ridgeview Elementary School re-roofing and roof-related work project bid award approval. B, 2016 hail damage program year 3 bid package 1A, East Terrell Hills Elementary School re-roofing and roof-related work project bid award approval. 3, minutes from March 2021, and 4, end of consent. Do I have a board member wishing to pull an item from consent?
I just turned it off. Pull item 1B, budget amendment number 3.
1B, what?
Budget amendment number 3.
Okay. Okay, anybody else? Do I have a motion to approve consent without item 1B?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Winkley. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Okay, Mr. Byer.
Yeah, actually a follow-up to, I think, when we first got this information a couple of months ago, or a month ago, whenever it was. How do we stand on insurance claims or any of that related to this budget amendment? I know we spent a lot out of pocket, and I know we're having to chase dollars all over the place, but do we have any movement with some of these items?
So the answer is yes, we still have an active claim. It is a slow process. It's not going to be nearly as slow as the 2016 hailstorm. I mean, those negotiations lasted better part of a year before we got settlement. The reason why I don't have an offsetting insurance recovery revenue budget change is because of the rules that we have to follow as a governmental entity. In order for me to call it fiscal 21 revenue, it has to be both measurable and available. Well, I can measure it. Working with Barry's group, we know how much we're going to claim. But available means it has to be cash in hand within 60 days of the end of our fiscal year. I can't guarantee at this point that we're going to get cash in hand by August 31. If before the final budget amendment, we're pretty sure, oh yeah, we're going to wrap this up real quick, then yeah, I'll add the insurance recovery revenue to the budget also.
Okay, thank you. I assumed we didn't have it already. I was just curious how that factored in.
Yes, sir, Mr.
Thank
Barry.
you.
So we'll be negotiating with the insurance company, but it's just like anything else with insurance companies. It's a back and forth type of deal. So I think we're pretty aggressive with them, and we will be. So hopefully we'll be able to recover all that.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve 1B?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Winkley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item 10, reports. A, interim financial and management reports. B, awarded bid report. Those have been provided for you. Item 11, discussion and possible action regarding board members' request for items to be placed on a future agenda and or request for reports from the administration. Do I have a board member wishing for a report or to place something on an agenda? Seeing none. Item 12, adjournment, and the time is 9:02. Thank you, everyone, for being here.